As substances, chapter 12. Hi.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Since you've last seen this chapter last month, well, this is one of my chapters again with heavy technical input. And so since you've last seen this, I have received legal comments, and as advice from my technical expert, we have agreed to make some amendments. And one of these is just on one of the objectives we had, so the difference from your previous version is that one of the objectives was split into two. So it's the objectives there, it was just split into two with a different heading. That was to do with the reverse sensitivity effects, just to make it stand out more. And then another is any reference to avoid risk. We have replaced that with minimize risk for consistency. And then in the P2 and P3 rules, in the permitted activity rules about explosive substances, we have clarified that it only applies to the group 3, which is the residential group, the one sensitive to hazardous activities in the threshold table. And then a description of the subclass categories are also inserted there to describe what those categories are. And then a definition of the more sensitive zone has been deleted as per legal advice. We have already included a note under that table, I think it's note 12, which gives us an explanation of the order of the zone groups according to sensitivity to hazardous substances. So just those changes that have been made from the previous version to this other one. Other than that, other proposed amendments are covered under the blanket general amendments, just as numbering and updating the section 32. And probably I would correct the title of the chapter there. It's Hazardous Substances and Contaminated Land chapter, because we also have a stage 2 of contaminated land included.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
The avoid risk versus minimise risk. Can you just repeat for me where that was going to go in relation to what?
Oh, it was in the objectives and policies, because some were written as to avoid risk, and then the others were mostly was to minimize risk. And the legal view was that to make it consistent, we just use one, which is to minimize risk.
But why don't we use avoid risk?
In the general practice with regards to hazardous substances is to avoid to minimize risk, because it's rather that we allow the activity, but we have to manage the activity there and minimize the risk, not to generally avoid it.
But wouldn't we be better to actually avoid the risk?
Well, to avoid the risk altogether, because we can't always say what's going to concern a risk, would mean having no hazardous substance rules, allowing no hazardous substances anywhere in the city, and that's not appropriate. So we can't avoid the risk altogether.
So what hazardous substances are we actually talking about? Things like asbestos and stuff.
No.
These hazardous substances is in our definition here as those which are flammable, explosive, capacity to oxidize. Yes,
Exactly.
yes, a lot of those. Yeah, so it's more appropriate to use
Devastations.
to minimize the risk rather than avoid. Yep.
Well, they seem relatively straightforward changes, and glad that we've got a bit of clarity around that last definition. Are there any questions from anyone?
What's happening when the port and the storage? Is that a hazardous substance?
Yes, they are, but they are covered under the Littleton Port Recovery Plan. And
This afternoon, you'll see under Chapter 21, there's a specific purpose port zone, and we'll have a discussion about
covered
that
there.
then.
Great, thanks.
Excellent. I'll move this one. Seconded by Paul. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Oh, you've moved so speedily, we haven't
Oh, I
even got
know.
our next presenter.